This country has a history. You must be intentional about correcting the injustices of the past. How do you get PAC, IFP, ANC-DA? I don't think we'll ever get that perfect, picture where a land expropriation bill, for instance, is agreed on by the DA and PAC. What bothers me sometimes is whether we are doing enough. I have a huge identity crisis. I forget I'm a politician.
Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX, and today I'm extremely excited and honored to be joined by Tshwane Mayor, Dr. Nasiphi Moya. We'll discuss her background, her life, having a PhD while being a senior politician, Tshwane developments, and maybe even draw her out on some national news if I'm lucky. Dr. Moya, thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you for inviting me. You've been doing quite well.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of what you've been able to achieve with your podcast. So thank you for having me.
It's so great to have you, and I feel like I'm back in the tutorial classroom because many people don't know you were one of my tutors at university.
Yes, and I'm still wondering why you kept following me around for 3 years. But you were a good student. You were a cute student. So I was lucky to have you in my classes.
Thank you. Yeah, but can we talk about those marks? Because wow, you were quite strict.
Listen, that was a life lesson on your side. Life is not easy.
This
so
is
that
true.
was me, just trying to set you up for life. You see, because of that, you're here now,
we're
so
here.
you can thank me later.
Wow, it's so amazing to see someone who tutored you actually becoming the mayor of Tshwane. What an incredible achievement. And what has that been like for you on a personal level? What was it like the day you realized that you were going to be mayor?
Well, it hasn't been that long. I think from the days of being a tutor and being a political science student, we were bombarded with so many bad things that were happening in government. I mean, all the case studies we were having at the time, they were showing us that government is becoming more and more ineffective to a point where I decided I'm just going to go to civil society. Those were the days. And then I think after my MA, I then got a job with the Democratic Alliance. And I think then it changed my perspective that actually you can work in politics without being part of the problem. And then I decided I'll just focus on governance issues. And that was for how many years? Between 2011 and 2024. That's all I wanted to do. Behind the scenes, I'll support politicians. I'll do the best that I can to make sure that in the space that I am, government works. And I had no aspirations to be a public figure at all until last year, January, when my party asked me to take up the position of a deputy executive mayor. So I have a huge identity crisis. I forget I'm a politician.
Yeah.
So but I learn on the day, every day I'm learning on the job to say what am I expected to do as a public representative, because these are two different roles.
Sure.
When you're in governance, all you need to care about is, okay, so vision has been decided. How do we get to achieve the vision? Right now I'm setting the vision, which is completely different from what I'm used to. It's just that struggle of knowing when to ask for help as well, and just stop sometimes and say, listen, I don't know. Let me look for someone who knows better than me. But it's been decent. I think the lessons for me has been quite decent, and I've use the experience that I have, the skills that I have, and what I know to do the best that I can. I don't do it the way other people would normally do it, I understand. But it's just me saying, listen, you're a South African. If you have an opportunity to do something, do it.
Yeah.
In the time that you've been borrowed. And that's exactly what has been happening the past year.
Absolutely. And I think you've got off to a good start, really seizing the narrative, showing how urgent the situation in Tshwane is, and making some governance strides even in the early days. What's been the most challenging part of becoming mayor?
I think it's just to understand this institution has more than 26,000 people.
Wow.
That must work for it. Right? And to having to worry about like in a day, you can deal with issues of environment, street lights, sewer issues. You worry about your debtor's book, all in one day, and just a preoccupation to say, is everyone across the city doing what they're supposed to be doing? I think for me, that's a challenge. Maybe it speaks to my personality of want to control everything, but just you have over 4 million residents, and you worry, I mean, did we inconvenience any of them today? Did we make anyone's life better today? Were people doing what they were supposed to be doing? I think for me, that's the struggle. And so when I hear good news, you know, we've cut grass here, I'm the first to want to communicate it, to say, listen, I know that we've, you know, done something good here to improve people's lives. But it's a worry when you, obviously not everything will always be, you know, in your purview to say, I know for sure that we've done everything we could today to improve the lives and deliver services. Yeah, and also the challenges of the institution. And what bothers me sometimes is whether we are doing enough. Because we're at a point in our institution, City of Tshwane, where we are so low, we can't go lower than we are right now. Whatever we do can't take us sideways, it must take up upwards, right? And the decisions that we make, you sometimes you even question yourself, like, is this decision going to take us forward? Have I done my homework enough to have that assurance within myself that this is going to advance the institution? And so those are things that when you go to bed and then someone calls you and say there's a disabled family here, they haven't had water for 2 days at 11 at night, you're like, whoa. You know, and also just appreciating what government is supposed to do and what government is not doing. That for me, seeing it at like, you know, close proximity. But luckily, you know, with the powers that I have, I can do something about some of those things. But those are some of the things that would bother me in this job.
And unlike many politicians, you have a life outside of politics, as you say. You have the governance experience, which many politicians actually don't have, but also academic experience. Has your academic life influenced the way that you govern, the way that you lead within Tshwane? I mean, as someone who calls themselves doctor, that's a rare thing, and I wonder how that feeds into your work in the city.
I'm a student of politics, so I'm very curious about the system. And so I don't approach the work with an attitude that I know. For instance, my master's dissertation was on, like, you know, a centralization of local government, right? And I've studied local government, the legislation, what it was meant to do and stuff. And you remember, maybe you won't, in 2009, there was that state of local government report that was released by the then Sicelo Shikeka.
Okay.
On the state of local government. Then in 2009, he then told us that this system or this structure or this sphere called local government is failing.
Yeah.
This was 2009. In response to that, I then wrote my dissertation to say, what do I think were the issues? And at the time, there were changes that were happening on how you deal with the HR of local government, that we wanted to integrate with the national government and have once a single public service. Then the issues of the regional taxations that were changing at the time. And that's when I got to appreciate South African local government. So I still have that naivety of what local government is supposed to do, the basics, you know, and the relationship between local government and other spheres. What is it?
Yeah.
So my approach, and also on the other hand, my PhD is on nation building. So I'm quite sensitive about the approach to service delivery, because I understand that when it comes to services, if you do not have infrastructure development in disadvantaged areas, 10 years from now, you wouldn't have contributed to reducing inequality. Thereby, yes. So I come from, so my approach in the main is very much influenced by what ought to be done, because that's what I studied. I don't have a huge constituency like other political leaders where the people, you give us a mandate. I only have 8% in terms of the party. But I think I'm learning even from other parties that are in the coalition, like the ANC way of doing things, the EFF way of doing things, and other to say, what does your party care about in service delivery?
Yeah.
You know, my party is quite straightforward. I mean, we're pragmatic people, service delivery to the people. We don't have ideological inclination. For instance, for me, an issue of illegal immigrants, for instance, for me, it's straightforward. Are they supposed to be in the country in terms of our laws? No. So I don't have extension of that understanding, and then I'll deal with it as a legal issue. But other parties may not look at it in that way. They may look from a Pan-Africanist point of view. But from where I stand, I always say what ought to happen. What does the legislation say? What does the economic, trajectory of the city and country say about this? So how do we then serve people from that point of view? So I'm still very much a student in the way I do things.
What was the decision to move to ActionSA like for you, and how did that decision happen?
It was very, it wasn't deep at all, as these kids say these days. It wasn't deep. So I was with the Democratic Alliance since 2011. 2014, I moved to the provincial office, still DA. From there, I moved to the city to be the head of the Chief Whip's office. I then became the Chief of Staff to the then Mayor Mokgalapa. And when he left, obviously my contract was just like 3 months after he left, and then I can leave as well. So I left.
Right.
And I used that time to basically finish my PhD. 6 months of not stopping. That's exactly when I actually wrote that the dissertation.
I know
6 months. You are poor, but you are productive. That was that was the phase.
Yeah, exactly.
And so obviously in January, because I left here May, in January I obviously knew that I must go back to the market. And so I did a few things, farming and just checking what else do I want to do, because I was so done with politics, by the way. I was so done with it.
I'm sure, yeah.
And so when then Michael called, the national chair of ActionSA called around March and said, listen, we need you to help us for 3 months. I said, sign with your blood. It's only going to be 3 months because I'm done with you politicians.
Oh, wow. Now look where we are.
They still laugh at me.
Yeah, this is a very long 3 months.
I know, right? And then 3 months, and he then said, so because I was doing candidate selection, he's like, no, but these people now are in government. Who's gonna coach them? I'm like, 6 months.
Yeah, max. Yeah.
Yes. And it just kept extra. At some point, I said, let me just sign up as a member and just be okay.
Because,
this trying to run away won't help. And then obviously for me, it was a matter of where to from here. And then the issue of deputy mayor came up. But that was after I've managed the coalitions in Joburg, Ekurhuleni and Tshwane, and Newcastle and our caucuses. So that was my job in the party. And so we've been, with ActionSA, I think the decision to join was not that difficult for me. I didn't know Mr. Mashaba. I knew Michael. So the work that I was doing, I thought, no, but this work makes sense. Let me commit as well. I can't expect other people to be committed. And before that, I've never signed up for membership of a political party. In the DA, that's not something that people advocated for. I mean, in fact, they were for the separation. I saw over the years, the approach was changing. But when we were officials, they would encourage us that the officials on one side, public reps on the other, so that there's no... Yeah, so when I signed up, and then I was co-opted into the Senate, and I was like, no, let me not be 1 foot out, 1 foot in. Let me see where it takes me. When I'm done, I'll just ask to be excused and go on to the next thing.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, you talk about some of the political dynamics while you were in the DA, but also now with ActionSA, this coalition that has come together, it seems to me like there have been some double standards applied to this coalition, because in many different parts of the country, there are diverse parties coming together to form a coalition. But for some reason, because your coalition has expelled the DA from power, it seems like this is some kind of rebel coalition. What do you make of the way that your coalition, because it includes the EFF, it includes the ANC, it includes parties that are not in the national so-called GNU. What do you make of the way it's been framed and it's been attacked in some quarters of the media?
I think not only the media, there are also residents who have expressed that, for instance, with my party, we've been against getting into a coalition with the African National Congress before the elections. In fact, since 2021, we've been canvassing on that ticket to say, but this is the party that has caused all the harm. Can they be changed? Can we have different players? And that would also explain our involvement as ActionSA in the moon pact shot. Yes. And that was on the principle that we're saying, can we have an alternative to the African National Congress? Then the elections happened, and the results told us with over 1% that actually not many citizens of this country believe in what we are saying, because that's what they were saying, that only 1% of the citizens of this country believe that you are the vehicle. And the analysis was done. It's like, maybe it's just how you've been going on about your business. You've locked yourself out by associating and limit your association. And even our own members reflected, like, we do not like your association with the Democratic Alliance. Most of us, we left Democratic Alliance. Now you're bringing it back to our lives. And so then we make a decision, we're not going to be part of the GNU, and we are okay with that decision. Now we then start to reflect and say, in Joburg, we've been begging the DA to allow us to be in government so that we can do what is required in the city of Joburg. In Ekurhuleni, we opted out of the coalition because we were saying, but the DA is not doing what we wanted to do in terms of the areas they are servicing and not servicing. And Ekurhuleni and Joburg, the decision was done. Now in Tshwane, is there an alternative to the then current configuration? Can we do something in Tshwane without the involvement of the DA? For the longest time, we said no, because it's either the DA or the African National Congress. And so when the decision was taken, after when the provincial, government of provincial unit, then we, as the party, heard that, no, actually, in fact, I think it was the federal chair of the DA then that said, we would like this model of GNU to be applied in provinces and metros. Then one of those instances where we woke up and say,
right,
hey,
does
what
that mean
about
we're
us?
now out?
Exactly.
Interesting. I never thought of it.
You know, I mean, it was a public thing. Like, it was not a secret from their point of view. Then in terms of the government of provincial unit, remember, it was even reported there were 3 portfolios they were getting. And then when it came to Tshwane, we then said, well, we need to have a different way of thinking about our existence. Tshwane is the only surviving coalition that we have. Can we take a risk and not be part of a DA-linked, like based coalition, DA-led coalition in Tshwane? And then the discomfort of us as the Senate was to say, what is the alternative? What about everything we've been saying about the African National Congress? And the results were telling us that this association wasn't working. Why don't we try the other configuration? It was not an easy decision for us, but we had to try something, which is a lot of pressure when you are, right now at the, and so the negotiations started by saying, ANC said, no, but we want to work with you guys. It's you who don't want to work with us. EFF said, actually, we'd be lucky to be part of such configuration because we are done being on the sidelines. And so the conversation started between my president and some of the leadership of the ANC. They said, well, we open, but it's going to depend on who gets to lead. Then he called me and said, if we put your name forward. It looks like these parties are amenable to it. Will you be willing to do it? Which was a huge responsibility.
How did you feel in that moment?
Well, for a second you feel like, geez, really? Why? Why me? I mean, we can look for someone else. But when then all the other parties said, yeah, we know her, we've worked with her since 2016, like the person. We don't know her political credentials, but we know her as someone, even when she was deputy mayor, she works with everybody. Yeah. So we've never, as a person, she's someone in the first instance who say we don't have reasons not to trust her in that position. But personally, of course, when you're given that responsibility, understanding the complexities of a coalition and where you have to lead leaders of other political parties, obviously there was a moment of doubt. Will I be able to pull it off?
Yeah, sure.
But it was one of those that if I don't, which was my position even in our Senate discussions, that I'm one person who must be neutral. Because if I say no, I'm this selfish person who doesn't want to help, in this model. If I say yes, I'm this eager person who wants to put her interests first. So it was a very awkward position to be in. But at some point I said, listen, I'll do it on the condition that my party has my back and these leaders from other political parties also will be supportive in terms of having this solid relationship in the coalition. And if it doesn't work out, well, we'll do what we need to do. So then, I took it. I didn't want to sound ungrateful as well. It's not every day that, you'll be trusted by leaders of other political parties to say, take an institution like the City of Tshwane, lead it. Will support you. It doesn't come every day, but I just needed to check myself first, though, that I'm not going to get here and make it worse than it was. I think for me, that's what was bothering me the most. But my family were like, well, go try it. If you can't, just let us know and get out of there. That's fine. Yeah, so my family was quite chilled about it, though.
Wow. And at the sitting at which you were elected, there was a lot of, shall we say, I don't know how to put it, but the DA was very dissatisfied and they were ejected. I don't know if you agree with that characterization. And they felt very aggrieved by the way that was handled. Do you think there's merit in their feeling there?
Yeah, I mean, in any person or parties that would have been removed in an unexpected way that this happened. And from what, for instance, the former mayor said, was like, I'm willing to make this work. What do I do differently? But I think the conversation was so far down the line with everything that has happened, starting with Moonpack shot and how the parties were so aggrieved by how, the DA acted in that and them getting into the GNU. And so there was so many issues that not one person could say, I'll do differently in my space. So he had to deal with the outcomes of a lot that had happened, which was understandable. But what I did not like is the insinuation that all political parties can do what they want to do for the future of their parties except for ActionSA. That I did not like. That insinuation didn't sit well with me because we're not members of other political parties. As the Senate of ActionSA, we had to talk about the future of our party and how we see it. And so I sympathized until that insinuation. Then I was like, I'm loyal to this party, not to the other groupings. And also then the insulting started. Then I disengaged completely. That even when the negotiations, the unhappiness was expressed, right? I mean, I tried to be in that space, try to help and understand, even before the negotiations happened. And now when you meet a person during the day, at night, the councillors start to attack you, then I was like, nah. I don't think we're going to get this right. Because, I mean, so then it gets personal and it was then too makey for me. But I understood where they were coming from, but I just wanted them to respect the fact that ActionSA is its own party. that we have leadership that have a responsibility to look out after our future. Was it a risky decision to make for all parties that are in this coalition? It was a risk to say, I mean, I'm sure in the side of the ANC, they would say, but this man has been insulting you all along about everything and anything. Now you are in coalition with them. You know, others could say, but you're putting a mayor that's not a politician. What do you hope to achieve? I mean, that's genuine for people who understand the system. To leave all these people with the political credentials and just go for the one with academic credentials without the political credentials, that's an issue, you know, for others. But for our party, it was a matter of, is this the right decision to make? Can it get better than what we've had? What if it gets worse? So all political parties involved, they took a risk. So I do appreciate that as well.
How's your relationship with Cilliers Brink now?
It's okay. It's okay. Like we've never been like drinking buddies or anything, but when we see each other, we greet. We engage in counsel, and yeah, that's fine. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a number of questions around Tshwane and governance in Tshwane. The Hammanskraal water situation. Now, can you clarify for us, because there have been some reports that you walked in and then there was drinking water already, but clearly that's something that's occupying your mind, and it's a key test for this government and this administration. This has been something that I think it's fair to say many administrations have not been able to get right. Where are we in making sure that the people of Hammanskraal are able to enjoy safe and clean drinking water?
Yeah, so Hammanskraal water is always going to be that issue, right? Where every politician wants to say, I'm that politician who resolved this. But if we were to think just and right about that issue, no one should be fighting for credit there. It can't be that after 20 years of people not having clean and drinkable water, politicians think credit and taking credit is the priority in that space.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, I get even the way, you know, I always watch how it plays out even in IGR spaces to say, I don't think this is one issue we must be taking credit on. We must just make sure that it gets done.
Yeah.
Now, what happened is that you remember there were cases of cholera, right? President came.
Absolutely.
And there was a commitment that was made by the president.
I recall that.
Yes.
In fact, I interviewed Senzo Mkhunu, who has been Minister of Water at the time, on the SABC.
So when we were launching, remember I only came into the system in Jan last year. We launched that project in April.
Right.
When the then Minister Mkhunu was responsible.
Yeah.
And in his address, he did say that he had a discussion with the former mayor on how to do this, right? What is the approach to ensuring that while we are resolving the long-term issue of the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant, people get water in the meantime. So then the project was allocated, I think it's just over 700 million rand. For this intervention, right? And so April 2024, the project is launched together with the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant phase 1 upgrade.
Right.
The Edwin Sodi's project is. And so the project, as a deputy mayor, was then delegated to be the chair of the submayoral committee that looks after Hammanskraal water, the issue of Hammanskraal water. Meaning from the side of the city, I oversee the Klipdrift package plant together with the MMC for the region and the MMC for the portfolio. And then I oversee the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant phase 1, but also the issue of the court orders for the Rooiwal farmers. So it's a project that you can't talk Hammanskraal water and leave the farmers out because they're severely affected. And so that project ran. So the intervention project, it comes in 4 modules. The first module was supposed to be completed in September last year. It was delayed until January for various reasons that could not have been avoided until January. And so there are 3 modules that are left. So in January, we then handed over to those areas and say you can start drinking the water. Everyone is fine. They're still drinking the water. Now we are working on the second module. which was supposed to be launched in Feb, and we're gonna end of this month. But they haven't said anything has changed, but it's for us to obviously interact with the Minister of Water and Sanitation, the Deputy Minister, the province, but they haven't said there's been a change in that. So the bottom line when it comes to the intervention project, by end of June, all these areas that are supposed to be supplied through the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant must have clean and drinkable water in their taps. That's project number one.
Right.
Then it's for us to monitor and communicate and make sure that we manage that. The second one is the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant.
Sure, and this feeds Hammanskraal effectively, is that correct?
Yes. But the upgrades, for them to do what they need to do, they go up to the third phase, right? Which will include the expansion. Phase one was in two parts. One, to complete the work that Edwin Company and Edwin Sodi's company and others were supposed to do.
So there are new service providers there now.
Yes, in fact, DBSA is the implementing agent. What we do as the city, we take the entire budget, it's 450 million over the 3 years. We take the entire 150 million for a financial year, we send it to DBSA. DBSA manages everything. So we don't manage that project.
See.
So the phase 1A is done now. 1A, yes, is done. And we are left with 1B, which basically will then deal with the phase 1 upgrade of what the plant is currently. And by June 2026, phase 1 should be completed. And then we then now talking about getting the 4 billion rands that we need for phase 2. And so the question always, like, will people then get clean and drinkable water from Rooiwal? We're still far from that.
Right.
I think with phase 2, we should be able then to start having clean water coming from Rooiwal. But what we don't want is to relax because we are saying there's the intervention. The intervention should be exactly what it is, an intervention, while we're then making sure that the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant, after 2 decades, is back to where it's supposed to be.
And what are the hindrances to getting that 4 billion that's needed for the long-term refurbishment and upgrade of Rooiwal?
I think our financial situation is going to make it a bit challenging to receive funding.
Sure.
Especially if we're looking for a loan. We have made our application to National Treasury, and obviously we're looking for even private partners. They say, where will we get the money? Whether it's going to be half, you will have to. But I think our financial situation doesn't make us to appeal to the market. I think that would be the hindrance. But with the help of National Treasury, and I think with the improvements in the governance system, and the more that we've got investors who don't think coming to the city is risky, by looking at our efforts, I think that will help us a bit. We do have a potential private, not private per se, but the Denmark government.
Okay.
So the Danish are saying we can help you raise the funds, but you are a risk to us if you don't deal with corruption, if you don't deal with your governance issues, because we don't want to bring Danish money here and then all of a sudden people are fired because of procurement issues. So we do have work to do as an institution to just present ourselves to the market as a legitimate institution that takes the public purse seriously.
Yeah. And I know you're going to be speaking about the first 100 days in office. One of your priorities has clearly been the financial situation, as you say, not just because of how it relates to Hammanskraal, but the wider financial health of this city and municipality. And sometimes as a citizen, you just worry that, I live in Joburg, so you just worry that the problem is too big, and you've heard these stories of debt and just financial mismanagement for so long that you almost feel sorry for the mayor or the person who now has to inherit all of this mess that has built up over decades. Is it possible to actually put the finances of Tshwane right again?
I think we don't have a choice but to do that. Whether it is easy, that's a different question altogether. But in terms of what needs to happen in the institution, and this is not our assessment, but the AG.
Yeah, sure.
AG says we are not an institution that is taking public purse seriously. In the way we deal with this, our systems, just SOPs. Imagine when the whole AGSA tells you the root cause is the absence of standard operating procedures.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a municipality that was established in 2000. What has happened? You ask yourself. Then AG said you don't have internal controls. You don't have systems that can predict a problem or that can detect a problem. Then AG says to us, your management is incompetent in discharging its performance and financial responsibilities. And your governance oversight is weak, that it can't even detect these things. You can't stop it. All of these things are happening. Your governance system can't, your committees, they can't put a stop to it. What it tells you is that the institution is non-existent. What you have is a municipality, but the strength of an institution is that work must happen even when people are not paying attention. When like that level of predictability, where you say if a service provider has submitted an invoice, you have the muscle memory that from this point to this point to this point, say an invoice is submitted. In the city, they would say, in terms of the AG report, we've got invoices we did not even record on our books. And you ask yourself, something so basic, when you know you've appointed, this is the tender you have, this is the budget you have, this is the process of getting the invoices in. How did you miss so many that 3 months down the line, no, there's a service provider calling politicians, no, I haven't been paid. So that's the institution that we're dealing with. Now, when you then deal with the finances need discipline. You use water, you use sewer, you use our electricity, we collect, like your waste.
Sure.
Am I able to now, with the consumption that is happening, our billing system, are they picking those things up now? In a system that is not interfered with anybody, just the systems in place to do that. And for the longest time, we relied on estimates. And to a point where residents of Tshwane, especially in township, they're like, you guys are robbing us, we're not going to pay you. I mean, I just finished a meeting now with the leaders of Haarzavi. They say we've been in these offices since 2016. My bill, one leader is saying 112,000. I'm not going to pay it because I don't know how you arrived at that figure. Interest has been, ballooning on this. And we're saying we've got now 29 billion debtors book. Now, when you ask, is it possible? Yes, it is possible, because we must go to basics of billing people. Will it be a clean, smooth process? No, it won't be. Because if we're dealing with someone who has not been paying since 2016, what do you do? In a culture where we want to change the culture, where now is people not wanting to pay, where you say to people, you must pay for services that you are using, because we pay for those services. We pay ESCOM, well, not that well, because now we even had to get to have an agreement with them. We pay rent water, we pay mahalis. So for the water that you consume, the electricity that you consume, you must be able to pay. So it's not because we are punishing you. No, you must pay for what you consume. And they say, okay, we want to pay you, just give us a clean bill. And so what we then said in these 100 days, at least 95% of the bills that have been issued in these 3 months, they must be based on actual readings and not estimates as a starting point. How are we going to deal with the historical issues? Then it's something that we'll deal with. But let's build the trust between us as government and the communities to say, we've heard you on this part. Because what is normally easy for leaders of communities, like write off. Like, no, we must be able to say to the rest of the residents that are paying, This is the decision that has led us to write off. Hammanskraal, for instance, we only wrote off the water part of the bill, not everything, that the residents have not been paying because they say, but you're not giving us clean water. We then said as the council, this is a social justice issue. We can as a council justify this. Now, we can't just write off willy-nilly. We must build a business case. And then so part of the 100 days, we then said to the CFO, tell us about this accumulating, because when we got here, I think we're 26, now we're at 29 billion of debtors book. It's because of the interest on these bills that have not been paid over the years. And the first group that they focused on was the child-headed households, where there's nothing you can do about it. If a household is poor, dealing with issues of estate transfer and stuff. And so we said, let's start there. Let's then demarcate the debtors book and say, how much is indigents? Because they just could not get, for whatever reason, they couldn't get on the indigent program. So we must, the simple answer is that we must go back to the basics. For us, it won't be a week's project. It won't even be a year's project. But we must be able to have a direction which we're going to take and sell it to the National Treasury to say, if this is how we're dealing with our debtors book, because we don't want to start a culture of people where they use services and don't pay, because we can't afford the services, the other services that must go to them. If they don't pay, that's how we raise money. So whether we can then take this approach to National Treasury, check it with the ActionSA and say, if we take this approach with our debtors book, is this something that would be acceptable without looking reckless with the public purse? But the bottom line is that we start there. Don't estimate. Build people. We've got the team that can do the work. So it's not going to be easy. And it's one of those things that will challenge us in this administration as well. Because I know that people, it's easy to say, you're not the only municipality that's affected, but we're feeling the pain. The fact that the collections are not where we want them to be, it tells you something must change, however that changes, but something has got to change.
Fam, before we get back to the episode, we just want to let you know we have a big goal on this channel to build this community to 1,000 members. That means we have 2 new levels of SMWX membership. The first level gives you exclusive access to content, discounts on merch, but the second level, in addition to various other perks, gives you access to me. We're going to have meetups, online sessions. You're going to get discount on our live events. So if you want to deepen your SMWX community experience, help us get to that 1,000 member level. Look forward to seeing you there. As the mayor of Tshwane, you raised to become something of a national leader or a figure of national public debate. I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but I can guarantee that it's true. And I wonder, I mean, feel free to not cast any of your views onto the national picture, but what do you make of the GNU and this new moment that we find ourselves in as a country after an election where I think we're probably all as a country trying to figure out exactly what happened, because for the ANC to fall so far, was just breathtaking in its scale, and we're all trying to figure out where we go from here. What do you make of this new GNU moment we're in?
I think for me, in the context of coalitions, for me it was that moment where we realized we have not figured out what would be the absolute model for coalitions in the country. That in South Africa, we must now start learning that the parties that did not ever think that they would be on one side, they would ever be on one side. And it's about the necessity and the jostling for the space, that all parties want to be in power and they would go for what will lead them there. There was no, I mean, the things that we now see playing out where there's ideological conflicts. I don't even know if I would call them ideological conflicts, but before May 2024, you wanted, the Land Expropriation Act to be in a party. You didn't vote for it because of your manifesto and your beliefs. All of a sudden, your minister must implement it. The Bella Act, same, you were opposite it, now you're... So those are not, I don't think those are easy decisions to be made, but necessary decisions that maybe the lesson for me with GNU was that sometimes you just have to do what needs to be done. And when it comes to the significance of GNU, without attaching my political views, just as a student of politics, where our country was really not going the direction we wanted or hoped for, when we're doing the 30 years assessment into democracy, and you look at, could we have done better? And most of us said yes, with the right decision makers and the right policies and the intense program of transformation, we could have been far. But I mean, in my thesis, my PhD, I reflected on it, that the one party dominating is not serving us. Maybe we are at a point for us to respond to issues of diversity. You need diversity in leadership. So for me, the issue of GNU, but what I'm not sure, maybe people will start writing thesis about GNU, is how do you get PAC, IFP, ANC-DA to agree on... So I don't think we'll ever get that perfect, picture where a land expropriation bill, for instance, is agreed on by the DA and PAC with the same breath, But I think it was a necessary injection to the political culture in the country. And in all honesty, I think it's good that we've got people that can lead us within the cabinet, that can voice different South Africans' perspective, whether you agree with them or not. But to have one party dominating, it's easy for these things to be like, hidden. You've got the vote, you just raise your hands, the bill is passed, without getting the voices of others, especially the minority.
And ActionSA has taken an interesting decision to, at the national level, step away from the GNU and play a role of opposition. Why do you think it's important to play that role rather than being part of national government as well?
So for any democracy to work, you need an opposition, a strong one at that, right? And for the longest time in our country, Democratic Alliance was that voice in parliament. I mean, if you think back to Nkandla, it's always been the opposition that uncovered and revealed things that that Parliament was doing that would not necessarily be what us as ordinary South Africans would know. I mean, we even had like figures. I forgot her name, but a former DA MP in the Justice Department. I forgot her name, but those were figures that we trusted. That if anything is wrong in government, those are the figures that would reveal it. The issue of Patricia de Lille, for instance. So our democracy has always been healthy because of opposition. And the moment you then have the DA, Patricia de Lille, Bantu Holomisa, Hlabisa being part of government, what are you left with? And so from our side, it was a very constructive discussion that we had and said it would be easy to just say, get us a Home Affairs, and we run and we showcase what we can do in government. But what does it mean for the body politic of South Africa, where you don't have that voice that you used to have in the form of opposition? Because, I mean, I remember one of my colleagues in the Senate says it's like opposition is being co-opted. So that vacuum, and then I saw, for instance, MK EFF saying we will be the progressive caucus. And that's something that should have been good. I don't think I've seen where they have a congruence in terms of the things that they're voicing out. I've seen one or two in committees, and I do follow what they do, by the way, because I think for us,
well, they seem to be fighting more than they're fighting the ANC at this point.
And I think there will be a point where the opposition, it doesn't matter which color you are wearing, but the moment you say, I'm not inside the GNU, I'm outside. What is it that you are looking out for? Because remember, it's a revolving door. One day it's the DA that's there. Maybe in the next term, DA will say we're opting out and EFF goes in. But we need a an opposition to this coalition called the GNU, however the configuration is.
Absolutely.
We're lucky in Tshwane. And I'm saying lucky because if you're a government that doesn't look over its shoulders, you then get to do many wrong things because you've got the arrogance of the numbers. And when we take reports to council, I know that I've got solid numbers. I mean, I can get anything approved. But it comforts me when we get questioned and we start debating and start changing recommendations, because that means someone is checking us. Because if we don't do that, that means these constituencies that are not necessarily represented in our coalition, they don't get their voice expressed in government. And that's not something that we must celebrate ever. Yes, we've got the numbers, but where you then realize, I didn't think of it that way, or it's not something that I was aware of, then you are able to, because you've got a strong opposition. And I think GNU can also do that, especially when they start fighting among themselves. Someone must check out for, for us as the residents,
Yeah, well, some would say the DA is now learning what it means to be like in a coalition where you're not the biggest party.
Yes, I'm not smiling.
I won't ask any further questions. To end off, we ask most of our guests what's one thing they would like to change about South Africa. So if you had a magic wand and you could change anything about the country, what would that be?
Sure. Not one thing, hey? You know, Sizwe, this democracy is 30 years old. Do you know that there are 30-year-olds in South Africa that have no prospects of owning a car, having a permanent job, or maybe it's the other way around, permanent job, owning a car, ever owning a bonded house? It's just something that should measure that your lifestyle is improving, right? Or just something as basic as, I've got cousins of mine, my age, we started off, the same way, same village, same education system. Standard 9, they had to opt out of the system. And those people, their children, there's no prospects of their lives being improved. And to celebrate one person out of 50 people, it just doesn't work. So we need to have a country that thinks for those people more than those who've made it. I don't need much help, but I want policies and leadership that think of, I was saying in Hammanskraal, for instance, 20 years without water. Do you know that there's a 20-year-old that ever experienced drinking water from the tap? With this 20-year-old born in Ramotse, 20-year-old has never stood in front of a tap, got clean water, drink it inside their own house. And so we can't keep making excuses when we leaders in public service fail. It's easy to shift it to politics like we've been discussing now. We've only been discussing politics, how it's influencing, everything that we do, the changing of mayors in Tshwane, how does it affect? But we're not discussing government. You get your political parties, then you get government as the institution that I always say to my colleagues, government is the last line of defense for the vulnerable in our country. There's no other one who's going to come and say, yes, you can bring civil society, you can do all those things. But we need to get a caring government that understands this country has a history. You must be intentional about correcting the injustices of the past so that you can get others over. You can say, no, the older ones, maybe we've got kids who pass matric, who can't be admitted to higher education institution. Who's doing what about that? And where are those kids going to go? The economy is not growing at a pace that it's supposed to do. What do you think those kids are how do you think they're going to spend their time and energy? And so for me, if I were to get something, is to have government to care. Right now, the civil servants that we have, I don't think they get it. that it actually depends on them to change the trajectory of our country. It pains me. You know, we go to these imbizos, Sizwe. You're looking at ugogo. Ugogo is taking care of 8 people unemployed in their house. And yes, grants and everything, but we're not transforming this country. That's my worry. We're not transforming this country. Instead, we just compounding the problem. We're not thinking ahead. And so for me, if we can just think about how government as the institution of the people can be used effectively to transform this country, I think I'd be happy.
Well, Dr. Nasiphi Moya, thank you so much for joining us on SMWX. If you are keeping your eye on the government officials like you were on my essays, then I know things are going to happen in this
Thank you.
municipality.
I apologize less now about those marks. Yes,
no, fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank
No,
you very much. It
definitely.
was so great to see you again. Congratulations on all you've achieved and good luck for the future.
Thank you so much. And good luck with what you are doing as well.
Thank
we
you.
need more people asking these questions.
Absolutely.
So whenever you have questions about Tshwane, I must always be available because I know there are people who trust you more than they trust me. If you ask the questions for them,
least, yeah.
they are likely to listen. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. Comment down below. How did you respond, react to our conversation? Help us get to our next milestone of 200,000 subscribers. Like, share, subscribe, and keep it locked on SMWX. Aye.
Na na na